My name is Melanie Myers. I am 35 years old, and I was 40 seconds from driving straight into a trap. Thursday afternoon, October. A parking lot in Leesburg, Virginia. I had my father's original will in my bag, a probate attorney waiting in her car, and a meeting in 90 minutes that would decide who got everything my parents spent 40 years building. I pressed the unlock button. The headlights blinked. A man in a torn jacket came sprinting across the lot. He grabbed the edge of my door before I could pull it shut. "Ma'am, don't start that car. Your stepmother—" He was out of breath. His hands were shaking. "They set something up in that room. You walk in blind, you lose everything." I did not walk in blind. And what happened in that conference room would unravel 4 years of lies and destroy the woman who thought she had already won. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories, where we share powerful stories about family betrayal, hidden truths, and the quiet strength it takes to stand your ground. Every story here is about dignity, boundaries, and the kind of justice that does not need to shout. If this one resonates with you, drop a comment below and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a story. Now, let me take you back to the beginning. My mother died when I was 22, ovarian cancer. She fought for 14 months and lost on a Tuesday morning in March while my father held her hand and I held the other. That was the last time I saw my father cry in front of anyone. Harold Myers was a carpenter. He built our house with his own hands. Every beam, every cabinet, every crooked shelf in the hallway that my mother refused to let him fix because she said it had character. He wore the same gold pocket watch every day, clipped to his belt loop. His father gave it to him the day he graduated trade school. He never took it off. For 11 years after my mother passed, it was just me and Dad. Sunday dinners. Tax season where I did his books for free. Phone calls every Wednesday at 7:15 in the evening because that was when his favorite show ended and he had nothing else to do. Then Maisie Hargrove walked into his life. She showed up at his church. "New to town," she said. "Recently widowed," she said. She brought casseroles and compliments and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. She smelled like gardenia perfume, thick, sweet, the kind that stayed in a room after she left. Within 4 months, my father was having dinner with her 3 times a week. Within 8, he married her. I did not fight it. He was 61, lonely, and Maisie was attentive in ways that I, living 40 minutes away and working 60-hour weeks at the accounting firm, could not always be. But I noticed things. The way Maisie steered conversations away from money, the way she smiled at everyone in the room, except when she thought no one was looking. My father had a heart attack on a Saturday in July. Massive. The paramedics said he was gone before they arrived, but they tried anyway. I was at the hospital within 20 minutes. Maisie showed up 40 minutes after me. Her makeup was perfect. I remember thinking that was strange. Your husband drops dead in the kitchen and you take time to put on lipstick. But grief does strange things to people. I told myself that. For a while. The funeral was small. 32 people. My father's friends from the lumberyard. A few neighbors. Ruth Delacroix from next door brought flowers from her garden. Yellow roses, because that was what my mother used to grow. Maisie wore black and cried into a handkerchief that she pulled from her purse at exactly the right moments. 2 weeks after we buried him, I got a phone call. "Miss Myers, my name is Gerald Fenton. I am the attorney handling your father's estate." I sat up straight. My father's estate had always been managed by Tom Beckett, a quiet, careful man who had handled our family's paperwork for 20 years. "I am sorry," I said. "There must be a mistake. My father's attorney is Tom Beckett." Fenton cleared his throat. "Your father transferred his legal affairs to my office approximately 2 years ago. Mrs. Hargrove facilitated the introduction." I wrote down his name, Gerald Fenton. Fenton and Associates. "There is a new will that needs to be reviewed," he said. "I would like to schedule a meeting at my office with all relevant parties." I hung up, sat in my kitchen for a long time. My father never mentioned changing attorneys, not once. 3 days later, I drove to my father's house, the house he built, the house I grew up in. 4 bedrooms, a wraparound porch, a garage full of his tools and sawdust that never quite settled. The front door had a new lock. I stood there with my old key in my hand, turning it, hearing it catch against something that did not fit. I knocked. Maisie opened the door in a silk robe and slippers. Behind her, the living room had been rearranged. My mother's reading chair was gone. "Melanie, I was not expecting you. I came to pick up some of Dad's things." She tilted her head. "This is my home now, honey. Harold and I discussed it. I will send you anything that belongs to you." I stood on that porch for 10 seconds without speaking. Then I asked if I could at least check the garage. She waved her hand. "Take whatever is in there. I have no use for sawdust." The garage was a mess, tools shoved into boxes. My mother's old bookshelf, the one Dad refinished for her birthday, was leaning against the wall with a crack down the middle. And in the corner, underneath a pile of drop cloths, I found it. A cedar box, 6 inches by 12. My father made it for my mother the Christmas before she got sick. He carved her initials into the lid. L.A.M., Laura Ann Myers. Inside, she used to keep letters and photographs and a locket with our family portrait. Maisie had thrown it out here with the sawdust and the broken things. I carried the cedar box to my car. It smelled like sawdust and my mother's hand lotion. I did not open it. Not yet. The following week, Maisie invited the family to dinner. Not at a restaurant. At my father's house. My father's table. My father's dishes. She called it a gathering to discuss Harold's wishes. She said it like she was hosting a book club. 12 people showed up. Uncle Gene and Aunt Patty, my cousin Brian, 2 of my father's old friends from the lumberyard, Ruth Delacroix, who sat in the corner and said almost nothing, and Derek, Maisie's son from her first marriage, 28 years old, unemployed. He wore a new suit and sat next to his mother like a bodyguard. Maisie stood at the head of the table. She had printed copies of something, I could not see what, and placed them face down at each seat. "Thank you all for coming," she said. Harold was very clear about his wishes. The new will, prepared by his attorney Gerald Fenton, leaves the estate, the house, savings, and life insurance, to me, as his wife. She paused, looked at me. "Melanie will receive a separate bequest of $20,000. Harold felt that was appropriate, given her independent career. 20,000 out of 750,000. Uncle Gene shifted in his chair. Aunt Patty stared at the table. Nobody spoke. Derek leaned back and smiled. Dad wanted what was best. Mom is what was best. I looked at Maisie's wrist. She was wearing my father's gold pocket watch. She had taken the clip off and looped it through a thin bracelet chain, wearing it like jewelry, like a trophy. My mother's husband's watch, on the wrist of a woman who showed up 40 minutes late to his death. I did not say anything. Not yet. I made the mistake of asking one question. When did my father sign this will? Maisie smiled, not the charming smile she used on everyone else. The other one, the one that said she had already counted the money. 2 years ago, right after he and I discussed his priorities. His priorities, I repeated. She stepped closer. 12 people watched, and in a voice sweet enough to rot teeth, she said it. "You were never his priority, sweetheart. He chose me." The room went silent. Not uncomfortable silent. Complicit silent. The kind of silence that tells you no one is coming to help. Uncle Gene looked at his hands. Aunt Patty sipped her water. Brian pulled out his phone. Ruth Delacroix stared at Maisie with an expression I could not read. I picked up my purse. I pushed back my chair. And I walked out of that house without saying a single word. Nobody followed me. I sat in my car for 15 minutes before I started the engine. The gardenia perfume was still in my nose. That thick, sweet, suffocating scent that Maisie carried everywhere like a warning label. 12 people in that room. Not one of them said a word. I want you to sit with that for a moment, because I sat with it for a long time. In my car, in the driveway of the house my father built, wearing a dress I bought for the occasion because I thought this was going to be a conversation, not a sentencing. She told me I was never his priority, in front of everyone, and everyone let her. That was the night I decided I was not going to cry about this anymore. I was going to find out the truth. I went home to my apartment, a 2-bedroom rental in a complex off Route 7. Neat. Quiet. The kind of place a CPA lives when she spends more time at the office than anywhere else. I sat on my couch with a photo of my parents on my lap. Mom in her garden, Dad behind her, one hand on her shoulder, the other holding his pocket watch like he always did when he was proud of something. The numbers ran through my head because that is what I do. I am a certified public accountant. Numbers are my language. The house, $480,000, based on recent comps in the neighborhood. Savings and investment accounts, roughly $150,000. Life insurance, $120,000. Total estate, approximately $750,000. 40 years of Harold Myers showing up to the lumberyard at 6 in the morning. 40 years of overtime and side jobs and birthday parties where he said, "We do not need anything fancy," because he was putting every spare dollar into the mortgage, and Maisie wanted all of it, after 4 years of marriage. But the money was not the worst part. The worst part was the question I could not stop asking. Did he really change his mind? Did my father actually sit down and decide that his daughter of 35 years deserved $20,000 while a woman he had known for 4 years got everything? Because if he did, then I did not know my father at all. I looked at the photo again, his hand on my mother's shoulder, his eyes, steady, certain, the way they always were. Either my father lied to me for 10 years, or someone was lying now. I found Linda O.C. through a colleague at work. Probate attorney, 14 years of experience, office in a converted townhouse off King Street with diplomas on every wall, and a coffee mug that said, "I object to mornings." She was direct. I liked that. I sat across from her desk and laid out everything. The dinner, the will, Maisie's declaration, the new attorney, the $20,000. Linda took notes. She asked about my father's health before he died. She asked about his relationship with Maisie. She asked when the will was supposedly signed. Then she leaned back and said, "The will Fenton produced looks valid on its face, but I have questions. Your father had an existing attorney for 20 years and switched without telling you. That is unusual." "She did not even wait for the headstone," I said. "She was already moving furniture before the stone was placed." Linda wrote that down. "We would need to prove either undue influence or forgery. A handwriting expert can analyze the signature. But I want to be honest with you, Melanie. Contesting a will takes time and money, and Maisie will fight back." "I know. She has the advantage right now. She has the house, the will, and the attorney who drafted it." "I know that too." Linda studied me for a moment. "Most people who sit in that chair are angry. You seem calm." I thought about it. "I am not calm. I am just very good at spreadsheets." She almost smiled. "All right. Let us start with the signature analysis. I know a forensic document examiner named Paul Whitfield. He is expensive, but thorough." I signed the retainer that afternoon. I did not know that Maisie had already prepared her next move. It came in the mail to Linda's office. A certified letter from Gerald Fenton, addressed to Counsel for Melanie R. Myers. Inside was a medical file, 14 pages, clinic letterhead, dates, diagnoses, treatment notes. According to this file, I had been treated for dissociative identity disorder and delusional episodes at a psychiatric clinic in Richmond 3 years ago. I stared at the pages. My hands were steady, but something inside me was not. "I have never been to a psychiatrist," I said. "I have never been to Richmond for any medical appointment. Ever." Linda read through the file slowly. "The clinic is called Piedmont Behavioral Health Associates. The treating physician is listed as Dr. Aaron Kurtz. The file includes session notes, a diagnosis summary, and a recommendation for ongoing monitoring." "None of it is real." Linda set the pages down. "If this file is legitimate, and I am not saying it is, Maisie could petition the court to appoint a guardian ad litem. She could argue that you lack the mental capacity to contest the will." I felt the room tilt. Not because I was scared, because I understood. She is not just trying to take the money, I said. She is trying to take me. She wants to remove me entirely. Linda nodded. This is not a defensive move. This is offensive. She prepared this in advance. The document listed a clinic in Richmond, an address on West Broad Street, a doctor with credentials from a university I had never heard of. I told Linda I wanted to check. She said to be careful. I drove to Richmond the next morning, found the address, stood in front of a boarded-up building with plywood over the windows and a for-lease sign covered in graffiti. There was no clinic. There never had been. I called the Virginia Board of Medicine from the parking lot of that boarded-up building. I gave them the name, Dr. Aaron Kurtz. Spelled it twice. The woman on the line typed for a while. Then she said, "We have no physician by that name licensed in the Commonwealth of Virginia." "Are you certain?" I checked active, inactive, and revoked. No record. I sat in my car and wrote everything down. The address, the board's response, the date and time of my call. I took photographs of the building, the plywood, the graffiti, the for-lease sign that had been there long enough to curl at the edges. Then I drove back to Leesburg and sat in Linda's office. "The clinic does not exist," I said. "The doctor does not exist. The entire file is fabricated." Linda leaned forward. "Good. That tells us how far they are willing to go. But here's the problem. Proving the medical file is fake does not automatically prove the will is fake. Those are two separate legal questions. So we need more. We need someone from the inside, someone who saw the will being prepared, someone who can testify to how Fenton operated." I looked out her window. The parking lot was half empty. A man sat on a bench near the sidewalk reading a newspaper. I barely noticed him. "Melanie," Linda said, "I want to ask you something. When your father was alive, did he ever mention a specific place where he kept important documents?" I thought about it. The filing cabinet in the study. Maisie had that now. The safe deposit box at the bank. I would need to check. And the cedar box. The cedar box was sitting in my living room. I had not opened it yet. "Maybe," I said. "Let me look." The black SUV showed up on a Tuesday. I noticed it on my way to work, sitting 2 cars behind me at the light on Route 7. Virginia plates, tinted windows. It followed me to the office parking lot and then kept driving. Wednesday, same vehicle. This time it was parked across the street from my apartment when I left in the morning. It pulled out 30 seconds after I did. Thursday, I wrote down the plate number. It took Linda's office less than an hour to run it. Registered to Derek Hargrove. Maisie's son was following me. That evening, my phone rang. Unknown number. I picked up. "Melanie." Derek's voice was smooth, practiced, like he had rehearsed this. "Listen. My mom just wants this to be settled quietly. There is no reason for lawyers and courts and all of that. It is expensive. It is stressful. Nobody wins. What do you want, Derek? I want you to think about it. 20,000 is not nothing, and you have a good career. You do not need a house you are not living in." I said nothing. His voice dropped half a register. "Courts take a long time. And your name? Your mental health history. That would all become public record. Think about it. Is that really what you want?" He was threatening me with a file that did not exist about a condition I never had, created by a doctor who was never real, at a clinic that was a boarded-up building. "Think about it," he said again. "That is all I am asking." I hung up, put the phone face down on the counter. Derek was not smart enough to build this plan, but he was loyal enough to execute it. That made him useful to his mother and dangerous to me. Maisie worked fast. Within a week, she had told the church group that I was struggling with mental illness. She said it with concern in her voice, the way someone talks about a stray cat they feel sorry for, but would never take in. People I had known for years started calling. "Honey, Maisie mentioned you have been going through something. Do you need help?" And, "We are praying for you, sweetheart. Maisie told us your father was very worried before he passed. She was poisoning the well. Every conversation, every prayer circle, every casserole drop-off. She was building a version of me that did not exist, a version that was unstable, unreliable, someone whose words could not be trusted. Then Ruth Delacroix called. Ruth was 60 years old, retired schoolteacher. She had lived next door to my father for 18 years. She watered his plants when he traveled. She brought him soup when my mother was in the hospital. I do not believe one word that woman says, Ruth told me. Not one. But I do not have proof, Melanie. Just my gut. What have you seen? Ruth paused. 4 days after the funeral. 4 days. She had men with a truck at the house, hauling things out of the garage. Your father's tools, boxes of his papers. She was clearing him out like he was a tenant. I closed my eyes. And there was something else, Ruth said. In the last month before your father passed, a man in a gray suit came to the house 3 times. Always when you were not there. Always when your father was resting upstairs. Maisie met him at the door. A man in a gray suit. Gerald Fenton wore gray suits. I had seen him once, at the funeral, standing near the back. Thank you, Ruth, I said. You may have just given me the timeline I needed. That night, I sat on my living room floor and looked at the cedar box. It had been sitting on the shelf by the window since the day I brought it home from the garage. I walked past it every morning, touched the lid sometimes, ran my fingers over the carved initials, LAM, but I had not opened it. Part of me was afraid of what I would feel. Part of me was afraid of what I would not find. I lifted the lid. The smell hit me first. Cedar and old paper and something faint underneath. Lavender. My mother kept dried lavender in her drawers. It had seeped into the lining of the box over the years. On top was an envelope, cream-colored. My mother's handwriting, small, precise, the letters leaning slightly to the right the way they always did. For Melanie, when the time is right. I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. A letter. She wrote it 6 weeks before she died. My sweet girl, if you are reading this, I am already gone and your father has moved on. That is all right. He deserves happiness. But I want you to know, the house, the savings, the life your father and I built together, it was always meant for you. He promised me, and he put it in writing. Underneath the letter, folded into thirds and held together with a paperclip, was a document, a last will and testament, dated 10 years ago, signed by Harold David Myers, witnessed by Thomas Beckett and Ruth Eleanor Delacroix. Notarized, the will left the house, and 80% of all financial assets to me. The remaining 20% was designated for a scholarship fund in my mother's name at the local community college. I held the 2 documents side by side, my mother's letter and my father's will. The paper was yellowed, the ink was slightly faded, but the signature was unmistakable. Loose. Confident. The tail of the Y in Myers swooping low and curling back, the way it always did. For the first time in 3 months, my hands were not shaking. I called Linda. I found the original will, I said. It was in the cedar box. Paul Whitfield's office was on the 2nd floor of a brick building near the courthouse. He had gray hair, reading glasses on a chain, and the kind of patience that comes from spending 30 years looking at ink under a microscope. I gave him 3 documents, the original will from the cedar box, the new will from Fenton's office, and the fake medical file. He worked for 6 days. When he called, his voice was measured but certain. The signature on the Fenton will is a simulation, he said. There are pen lifts in the middle of strokes where a natural signature would flow continuously. The pressure is inconsistent. Heavier at the beginning of each letter, lighter at the end. That is the opposite of a relaxed hand. What does that mean in plain terms? Someone traced or carefully copied your father's signature. They did a competent job. But not a perfect one, he continued. The medical file is a separate issue but equally problematic. The paper stock does not match standard medical printing. The font used in the header is a commercial typeface, not the institutional font typically used by Virginia healthcare facilities. And the physician's signature shows the same pen lift pattern as the will signature. The same person forged both, I said. That would be my conclusion. Yes. Linda reviewed the report that afternoon. She sat behind her desk and read it twice, then set it down. We have the original will. We have forensic evidence of forgery. We have the fake clinic and the non-existent doctor. And we have Ruth Delacroix, who can testify that a man matching Fenton's description visited the house repeatedly before Harold's death. She looked at me. If we had someone from the inside, someone who actually saw the documents being prepared, this would not even need to go to trial. I thought about the man on the bench outside her office, the one I kept seeing. If someone in your family has ever been pushed aside during an inheritance, told you did not matter, told to accept less than you deserved, then you know what this feels like. It is not about the money. It is about being erased. If this story is hitting close to home, subscribe and stay with me. Because what happened next changed everything. I started noticing him 3 weeks into the investigation. The man on the bench. He sat near the sidewalk outside Linda's office building. The same bench, the same spot. Worn jacket. Stubble that had grown past the point of deliberate. A backpack at his feet that looked like it held everything he owned. The first time, I assumed he was waiting for a bus. The second time, I noticed he was watching me. Not staring. Watching. The way someone watches a person they recognize but cannot decide whether to approach. The third time, I was leaving Linda's office after reviewing Whitfield's report. I walked to my car. He stood up, took 2 steps toward me, opened his mouth. I got into my car and drove away. I told myself he was nobody, a stranger. Leesburg had its share of people who slept on benches and asked for spare change. I was not heartless, but I was also distracted by a woman trying to steal my father's estate and frame me as mentally incompetent. But something stayed with me, the way he stood when he saw me, not the way a panhandler stands, shuffling, uncertain. He stood like someone who had made a decision, and I would learn, 2 weeks later, that he had been sitting on that bench every day because Linda's office was 6 blocks from the law firm where he used to work. The firm that fired him for refusing to do what Gerald Fenton asked. He knew my name before I knew his. He had been waiting to find the right moment. And the right moment came on the morning I was about to drive into a trap. The letter arrived on a Monday. Certified mail. Heavy cream paper with the Fenton and Associates letterhead embossed at the top. Dear Miss Myers, you are formally invited to attend a meeting regarding the estate of Harold David Myers, to be held at the offices of Fenton and Associates, 412 East Market Street, Suite 310, Leesburg, Virginia. Friday, October 17th, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. All interested parties are expected to attend. The last will and testament of Harold D. Myers will be confirmed, and the distribution process will commence. Linda read it over the phone. This is a power play. If they confirm the Fenton will at this meeting and you do not formally object, it accelerates the probate timeline against us. So we object. We do more than object. We show up with everything. I spent the next 5 days organizing, the original will in a protective sleeve, Whitfield's forensic report in a bound folder, Ruth's notarized written testimony confirming the timeline, the gray-suited man, the 4-day clean-out, the headstone that Maisie did not wait for. Linda prepped her arguments. She contacted the Virginia State Bar to confirm Fenton's license status and history. Clean record. No prior complaints. That would change. I had documents. I had a forensic expert's opinion. I had a neighbor's testimony. But Linda kept coming back to the same point. Everything we have is strong, but it is all external. If we had someone who was inside that office, well, someone who watched Fenton prepare the documents, it would be over. Fenton would fold to protect himself. I did not have that person. Not yet. 5 days until the meeting. 4. 3. Then Eddie Callahan stopped waiting on that bench and walked across a parking lot. It was Tuesday evening, 3 days before the meeting. I was leaving my office at the accounting firm, late, as usual, because tax extensions wait for no one, and walking to my car in the back lot. He was standing next to it. Not leaning, standing. Hands visible, arms at his sides. like he wanted me to see that he was not a threat. "Miss Myers?" I stopped 10 feet away. My keys were between my fingers the way every woman in America learns to hold them after dark. "My name is Eddie Callahan. I do not want anything from you, but you need to hear what I know." He was thinner than I expected. His jacket had a tear along the shoulder seam. His shoes were held together with duct tape on one side, but his eyes were clear, alert. The kind of eyes that belong to someone who has been paying attention. "How do you know my name?" I asked. "Because I used to work at Fenton and Associates. 7 years. I was a paralegal. Your name was on every document Gerald Fenton prepared for Maisie Hargrove." My breath caught. "I saw him create the new will," Eddie said. "I saw him scan your father's signature from a 2019 tax return and paste it into a new document. I saw him produce medical records for a clinic that does not exist, for a doctor that does not exist, diagnosing you with a condition you do not have." "Why are you telling me this now?" Eddie's jaw tightened. "Because I was supposed to notarize those documents. I refused. The following week, Fenton terminated my employment for performance issues that did not exist." He paused. 6 months later, I lost my apartment. But I still remember your face from the file. I did not take Eddie to a shelter or a church. I took him to a diner on King Street and bought him a cup of coffee and a plate of eggs and toast. He ate slowly, deliberately, like someone who had learned not to rush meals because he did not know when the next one was coming. "How long were you at Fenton's office?" I asked. 7 years. Started as a file clerk. Worked my way up to paralegal. I liked the work. Wills, trusts, estate planning, helping people organize the things they wanted to leave behind. "And Maisie?" Eddie set down his fork. "She came in about 3 years ago. First meeting. Just her. No Harold. She said she wanted to update her husband's estate plan. Fenton did not ask questions. He charged her $400 an hour and started drafting. My father never came in? Not once. Fenton had your father's signature on file from previous tax documents, legitimate ones, and used them as a template. I watched him trace the signature on a light table. Old-fashioned method. Hard to detect if you are not looking for it." Eddie wrapped both hands around his coffee mug. "When I told Fenton that what he was doing was forgery, he said I was overreacting. When I told him I would not notarize the documents, he said I was fired." "Did you go to the police?" He looked at me. "I was a paralegal with no physical evidence. They took my laptop and files when I left. My word against a licensed attorney with 30 years of practice. And 3 months after I lost the job, I lost my apartment. After that, I was a homeless man accusing a respected lawyer of fraud." He took a sip of coffee. "Nobody listens to people who sleep on benches." I listened. I brought Eddie to Linda's office the next morning, Wednesday, 2 days before the meeting. Linda was cautious. She closed her office door and sat down across from Eddie with her arms folded. "Mr. Callahan, I appreciate you coming forward, but I have to be direct. The opposing side will argue that you are a disgruntled former employee with no physical evidence, a man experiencing homelessness accusing a licensed attorney of forgery. How do you respond to that?" Eddie did not flinch. "I can describe the software Fenton used to prepare the documents. Legal Draft Pro, version 8.2. I can tell you the file naming convention he used. Client last name, underscore, document type, underscore, date. Myers underscore, will underscore 2024. I can tell you the exact dates Maisie came to the office, March 7th, March 21st, and April 2nd, because I logged every client visit in the intake system." Linda unfolded her arms. "I can tell you the light table was in the supply closet, second shelf from the top. I can tell you that Fenton printed the medical file on his personal printer, a Brother Laser, model 2700, because the office printer was down that week, and the IT guy had not come yet." Linda looked at me, then back at Eddie. "Combined with Whitfield's forensic report, the original will, the fake clinic investigation, and Ruth Delacroix's testimony," Linda said slowly, "this is enough." "Enough for what?" Eddie asked. "Enough that Fenton will fold. He is a criminal, but he is not stupid. When he sees an insider witness plus forensic evidence plus the original document, he will protect himself before he protects Maisie. She pulled out a legal pad. Here is what we do. We go to Friday's meeting. And we bring everything. Friday morning, October 17th. I woke at 5:30, showered, put on the navy blue dress I had bought 3 days earlier, not because I wanted to look powerful, but because I wanted to look like someone who had slept and eaten and was not falling apart. Even if I had barely slept and could not eat. I gathered the documents. The original will in its protective sleeve, Whitfield's report, Ruth's notarized testimony, Linda's legal brief, everything in a leather satchel that I placed on the passenger seat. And in the back seat, the cedar box. I walked to my car in the apartment parking lot at 8:45. The meeting was at 2. I wanted to arrive early. I pressed the unlock button. The headlights flashed, and Eddie Callahan sprinted across the street. "Ma'am." He was breathing hard, hands on his knees. "Don't start that car. Not yet." "Eddie? What are you?" "Derek was here this morning, 6:15. I saw him from across the street. He sat in a silver car and watched your building for 20 minutes. My stomach dropped. "That is not all," Eddie said. "I called a contact I still have, a receptionist at Fenton's office. She told me they have a doctor coming to the meeting today, a psychiatrist, Dr. Helen Marsh. Maisie arranged it." I stared at him. "They are planning to evaluate you, right there in the room. If you walk in without knowing, they will blindside you. Maisie will say you are unstable. Marsh will ask you questions designed to support the fake medical file, and by the time you realize what is happening, it will already be in the record." I leaned against my car. The cedar box sat behind me through the window. "So I should not go?" Eddie straightened up. "No, you should go. But you should go ready, and I should be there." I called Linda. "Change of plans. Eddie is coming with us." I started the car. Eddie walked around to the passenger side. I handed him a clean shirt from the back seat. White, still in the package. He looked at it, then at me. "Thank you," he said. "Thank me after," I said. And I pulled out of the lot. Sometimes the person who saves you is not the person you expect. Sometimes it is someone the rest of the world stopped seeing a long time ago. If someone in your life has ever stood up for you when they had nothing to gain, you know how that feels. Stay with me. We are almost at the meeting, and Maisie has no idea what is coming. Fenton and Associates occupied the 3rd floor of a glass and brick building on East Market Street. The elevator was slow. The hallway smelled like carpet cleaner and old paper. Linda and I arrived at 1:50, 10 minutes early. Eddie waited in the lobby downstairs. He would come up when Linda sent the signal. The conference room had a long, dark table, 8 leather chairs, a window that looked out onto the parking lot. On the table, Gerald Fenton had arranged a stack of documents, 3 pens, and a carafe of water with glasses for everyone. Like this was a closing on a house. Like this was routine. I smelled the gardenia before I saw her. Maisie sat at the far end of the table. White blouse, red lipstick, her hair freshly done. She looked like she was posing for a magazine cover about successful widows. On her wrist, my father's gold pocket watch, still looped through that bracelet chain. Derek sat to her right. New suit again, arms crossed. He glanced at me when I walked in and then looked at the wall. Gerald Fenton sat at the head of the table. Gray suit, silver pen, reading glasses perched on his nose. He nodded at me the way you nod at someone you expect to lose. And in the corner, in a chair slightly set back from the table, sat a woman I had never seen. Mid-50s, clipboard on her lap, pen in her hand. She wore a name badge that read, Dr. Helen Marsh, licensed clinical psychologist. Just like Eddie said. Maisie smiled. "Melanie, sit down. Let us get this resolved quickly." I pulled out a chair, sat down, and placed my leather satchel on the table. It was heavier than usual. Fenton opened a folder and began reading. His voice was flat, professional. The voice of a man who had read hundreds of wills and expected this one to go exactly the same way. The Last Will and Testament of Harold David Myers, dated January 15, 2024. Article 1. I, Harold David Myers, being of sound mind and body, do hereby revoke all prior wills and codicils. He read the distribution. The house, to Maisie Hargrove Myers. All savings and investment accounts, to Maisie Hargrove Myers. The life insurance payout, to Maisie Hargrove Myers. To his daughter, Melanie Ruth Myers. A specific bequest of $20,000. 97% to Maisie, 3% to me. Fenton set the document down. Are there any questions? Maisie did not wait. Harold was very clear about this. He wanted me taken care of. He told me many times. Melanie has her career. She will be fine. She turned to me with manufactured sympathy. I know this is hard, sweetheart. Then Dr. Marsh leaned forward, clipboard ready, pen uncapped. Before we proceed, Marsh said, I have been asked to be present today because of some concerns regarding Miss Myers's current psychological state. Mrs. Hargrove has shared medical documentation suggesting... Dr. Marsh. My voice was quiet, level. I did not raise it. I did not need to. Who invited you to this meeting? She paused. Looked at Maisie, looked at Fenton. Mrs. Hargrove contacted me and... Thank you, I said. I appreciate your concern. But before anyone evaluates anyone, I have a few documents I would like to share. I reached into my satchel, and I pulled out the cedar box. I set it on the table. The room went quiet. I opened the lid of the cedar box. The smell of cedar and lavender filled the conference room. Maisie stiffened. She recognized the box. She was the one who threw it in the garage with the sawdust and the broken shelves. I removed the will, placed it on the table. This is the last will and testament of Harold David Myers, dated June 14, 2014, 10 years before the document Mr. Fenton just read. Signed by my father, witnessed by Thomas Beckett, his attorney of 20 years, and Ruth Eleanor Delacroix, his neighbor of 18 years, notarized and filed with the Loudoun County Clerk's office. I pushed the document across the table toward Fenton. This will leave the house and 80% of all financial assets to me. The remaining 20% funds a scholarship in my mother's name. My father wrote this when he was 55 years old, in good health and under no one's influence. Linda placed a hand on the table. For the record, this is the only will signed by Harold Myers in the presence of independent witnesses with an established relationship to the testator. Maisie's smile had not moved, but the color behind it had. She looked at Fenton. Fenton looked at the will. He picked it up carefully, read the date, read the signatures, set it down. This document is 10 years old, Maisie said. Her voice was still controlled. Barely. Harold changed his mind. People do that. They do, I said. But they usually sign the new document themselves. Fenton's hand moved toward his pen. Stopped. He said nothing. Derek shifted in his chair. He was looking at the will like he had never seen one before. Maybe he had not. Dr. Marsh sat motionless with her clipboard untouched. I was not done. Linda opened her briefcase and placed a bound document on the table. This is the forensic analysis conducted by Paul Whitfield, a certified document examiner with 28 years of experience and over 300 court-accepted reports. She opened to the summary page. Mr. Whitfield's conclusion: the signature on the Fenton will is a simulation. He identified pen lift patterns inconsistent with natural handwriting, pressure deviations at the beginning and end of letter strokes, and spacing anomalies that indicate the signature was carefully copied rather than freely written. She let that sit for 3 seconds. In plain language, the signature on the will Mr. Fenton just read to us was forged. Fenton cleared his throat. One expert's opinion does not... I also have this, Linda said. She placed a second folder on the table. An investigation into the medical records submitted to my office by Mr. Fenton. The records claim my client was treated at Piedmont Behavioral Health Associates on West Broad Street in Richmond. I visited that address. It is a vacant building. It has been vacant for over 2 years. She placed photographs on the table. The boarded-up windows, the for-lease sign, the graffiti. The physician listed on the records, Dr. Aaron Kurtz, is not licensed in the Commonwealth of Virginia. He does not appear in any medical licensing database in any state. Maisie's hand went to her throat. There must be some confusion. Dr. Marsh set her clipboard on the table. She looked at Maisie, then at Fenton, and then at the photographs. She stood up, picked up her bag. I was not informed about any of this, she said to no one in particular. She walked out of the conference room without another word. The door clicked shut behind her. The psychiatrist Maisie brought to declare me incompetent had just left the room, and she did not say goodbye. Linda looked at me. I nodded. She pulled out her phone and sent one text message. 30 seconds later, the conference room door opened. Eddie Callahan walked in. He wore the white shirt I had given him that morning. It was slightly too large in the shoulders. His hair was combed. His face was shaved. He was still too thin, and his hands still carried the roughness of someone who had spent months sleeping on concrete. But he stood straight, and his eyes were steady. Maisie looked at him. The blood drained from her face the way water drains from a cracked glass, slowly at first, then all at once. She knew him. Fenton knew him too. He leaned back in his chair as if the table had suddenly become electrified. "Who is this?" Derek asked. He was the only one in the room who did not know. "My name is Eddie Callahan," Eddie said. His voice was calm, controlled, not angry, just clear. "I worked as a paralegal at Fenton and Associates for 7 years. Fenton's face went gray. You have no right to be here. I was present when you scanned Harold Myers' signature from a 2019 individual tax return and used it to create a new will. I was present when you printed medical records from your personal brother laser printer, model 2700, because the office machine was down. I refused to notarize those documents. You fired me the following week." The room was completely silent. Eddie looked at Maisie. "You came to the office 3 times. March 7th, March 21st, April 2nd. Mr. Myers never accompanied you, not once." I looked at Maisie, and I said it. "You told me I was never his priority, that he chose you." My voice did not waver. "But my father did not choose you. You chose for him. You walked into a law office with his tax returns and his trust, and you built a version of his wishes that he never wrote, never signed, and never knew about." Maisie's hands were shaking. The gold pocket watch slipped from her wrist and landed on the conference table with a soft metallic tap. She did not pick it up. "I loved Harold," she whispered. "I just wanted—" She did not finish the sentence. Her body folded forward in the chair. She pressed both hands against the table edge. Her shoulders heaved. She cried. Not the careful, timed tears she produced at the funeral. Real ones. The kind that come when every lie runs out of room. Derek sat frozen in his chair. His eyes were wide. He was looking at his mother the way you look at someone you thought you knew. I did not shout. I did not gloat. I did not say another word. I sat in my chair, hands folded, watching a woman who had tried to steal my father's legacy and my sanity fall apart under the weight of the truth. The truth does not need volume. Fenton sat very still for a long time, 30 seconds, maybe a full minute. He stared at the original will, then at Whitfield's report, then at Eddie. Then he said, "I need to speak with my attorney." "You should," Linda replied, "because my office will be filing a formal complaint with the Virginia State Bar on Monday. And we will be forwarding the forensic evidence and Mr. Callahan's testimony to the Loudoun County Commonwealth's attorney for review." Fenton did not respond. He placed his pen on the table very carefully, as if the act of setting it down required his full concentration. Maisie raised her head. Mascara streaked. Her voice was raw. "Your father would not have wanted this, Melanie. He would not have wanted his family torn apart." "My father wanted the truth," I said. "He wrote it down 10 years ago and put it in a box he built with his own hands. That is what he wanted." Maisie had nothing left. And then Derek spoke. It was the first time he had said anything since the meeting began. His voice was quiet, barely above a whisper. "She told me he wanted it this way. He was not looking at me. He was looking at his mother. You told me he wanted this. Maisie did not answer. She stared at the table. Derek closed his eyes, pressed his lips together, stood up. I need to go, he said. And he walked out of the room. I watched him leave. I did not feel satisfaction. I did not feel vindicated. I felt something closer to exhaustion, the kind that comes after you have been holding your breath for months and someone finally says you can stop. Linda gathered the documents, the cedar box, the forensic report, the photographs. We are done here, she said. And we were. 2 weeks later, the Loudoun County Probate Court confirmed my father's original will, the one from the cedar box, the one witnessed by Tom Beckett and Ruth Delacroix, the one that left the house, and 80% of everything to me. The Fenton will was thrown out. Gerald Fenton was placed under investigation by the Virginia State Bar within 10 days of our filing. His license to practice law was suspended pending review. The Commonwealth Attorney's Office opened a criminal investigation into forgery and fraud. Under Virginia law, forgery of a legal document carries up to 10 years in prison. The fake medical records added a second set of charges. Maisie was not arrested. Not immediately. But she lost all claims to the estate. The court ordered her to vacate my father's house within 30 days. She packed her things and moved to her sister's house in Roanoke. I heard she did not fight it. The medical file she fabricated was referred to the Attorney General's office for potential charges of criminal fraud and impersonation of a medical professional. As of the last update from Linda, the investigation was ongoing. Ruth testified in the probate proceedings. She confirmed the timeline: the man in the gray suit visiting the house, the 4-day clean-out after the funeral, the speed with which Maisie had moved to erase Harold from his own home. She did not even wait for the headstone, Ruth told the court. The scholarship fund was established 6 weeks after the will was confirmed, the Laura Ann Myers Memorial Scholarship. $2,000 a year for a student at the community college who needed help with tuition. My mother would have liked that. She always said education was the one thing nobody could take from you. I kept the house. Dad's tools are still in the garage. I refinished my mother's bookshelf, the one with the crack down the middle. It sits in the living room now, next to the cedar box. Eddie Callahan started working at a law firm in Alexandria 3 weeks after the meeting. Linda made the introduction. Not as charity, as a professional recommendation. He has 7 years of paralegal experience, she told the hiring partner. He has integrity, and he has a story that proves it. Eddie got the job, entry-level position, modest salary, but it came with a desk and a login and the kind of dignity that a bench on King Street could never provide. I saw him a month later. He came to the house, my father's house, to drop off a document Linda had asked him to deliver. He stood on the porch and looked at the door like he was not sure he belonged there. "Come in," I said. I made coffee. He sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Maisie had told 12 people I was never my father's priority. Eddie held his mug with both hands the way he always did. "How are you doing?" I asked. "I have an apartment," he said. "A studio. It is small, but it is mine." I nodded. "Thank you," he said, "for listening. That night at the diner. You did not have to. You did not have to sit on that bench for 3 weeks, I said. He almost smiled. I was not sure you would believe me. I almost did not. He looked around the kitchen, the cabinets my father built, the window my mother used to open every morning to let the breeze in. I picked up the gold pocket watch from the counter. It had been sitting there since I brought it home from the conference room. Cleaned it. Wound it. It still kept time. I held it for a moment. The weight of it. The warmth. Then I clipped it to my belt loop. The way my father used to. The cedar box sat on the shelf in the living room. Exactly where it belonged. The truth does not need volume. It does not need drama. It just needs one person willing to carry it, even when no one is watching. That is my story. A cedar box, a forged signature, and one man who refused to stay quiet. If this reminded you to check your own family's legal documents, do it today. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe, drop a comment, and I will see you in the next one.